Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chisom, your coding companion, and today is going to be a bit different. Rather than teaching, I would like to provide some sort of guide for developers. Now, this video was inspired by one of my subscribers. He reached out to me and asked some questions on how he was going to get started. Yeah, he's just starting web development this year, so I decided to release this video just to introduce the fundamentals and give a general guide on how I started out, what I recommend people should do, and other things that he can also do. Before I continue, I want to give a big shout out to my subscribers. In as much as I've released one video, I'm so excited that I have 18 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I'm really motivated. It makes me feel like the videos I'm going to be releasing are actually going to be very helpful, and I will ensure that I put extra effort in making them the best they can be. Okay, so let's continue. Now, while this video is tailored for beginners, I believe seasoned devs could get something from it. So if you started it, make sure you stick till the end. I've also provided timestamps in case you want to skip ahead to a section that piques your interest. Let's get right down to it. Now, there are a few things I would like to establish about learning web development in general. And the first is learning media. While some devs prefer reading documentations, blog articles, and other written content on the technologies they want to learn, others prefer a more visual approach. That is, they surf like the likes of YouTube and Udemy for courses. If you're watching this video, I'm pretty sure that you fall amongst these two categories. Now, in as much as these two categories are wonderful on their own, in as much as every single person would love to play to their strengths, I strongly I strongly advise that you strike a balance between the two, because each approach has their advantages and their disadvantages. And trust me, if you successfully strike a balance between the two, it will make you so much more versatile and it will smoothen your learning experience. Now, this is not just my opinion. A lot of people have this opinion. A lot of seasoned devs have this opinion. Particularly, I want to mention my favorite YouTuber, Kevin Powell, the king of CSS. I absolutely love his videos. And in one of his earlier videos, he mentioned something like this. This particular thing he said further reassured my point. Okay, now let's just critically analyze this for a bit. Let's say you love watching videos, you love the visual approach. Now, the visual approach has its own advantages. One, you see the way other people write their code. You learn good code styles. You learn about so many different things from watching a video. You see the way the person structures, how the person structures his problems, solves them, builds solutions, optimizes his solutions, and so on and so forth. Now, these are advantages you can get from a visual approach. Now, going to the documentation, or rather the reading approach, which is the approach I actually personally prefer. Now, there's a lot of advantages in that approach, in the sense that you actually get more information about the particular technology that you want to learn. There is no greater place to get more information. All you need to know about the technology than the documentation. But then again, as a beginner, the documentations can be overwhelming for you. That's why you need to strike a balance. Okay, now that I've talked about learning media, the next thing I want to talk about is learning paths. Now, what you need to know is that the web is a huge ecosystem that contains so many concepts, so many tools, and so many technologies. You need to come to terms with the fact that you can't learn everything. You're not a robot. You only compound more knowledge as you practice your craft. So as you move forward, you practice more, you learn, you unlearn, and it just sticks. It just happens. It's not something you can't just learn. You can't just learn every single thing. So what I need to emphasize on is that each developer's learning path is actually different. In as much as we are learning the same tools and technologies, our learning paths are actually different, and it depends uniquely on each person. Okay, now I want to hammer on a very important point, and that's tutorial help. And this is usually tailored towards those that prefer the visual approach. Now, you could watch a tutorial about building something. You could code along, fine and good. But that alone is not just enough. You actually have to practice. You actually have to get your hands dirty. Because the only way something can actually, a skill or whatever you learn can actually stick is by you getting your hands dirty with actually practicing what you're doing. You might watch a video how to create a movie application using HTML and JavaScript. What you understand, the person explains as the tutor explains as he or she is going. But then you've not really learned that until you've gone out of that video, like you've kept the video aside and actually tried thinking of ways of implementing certain things. And this video is all about helping you do that. So I'll be getting to that point soon. There's a lot more I would like to say, but I'll stop here for now. I don't want this video to be longer than it should be. Okay. Now, like I said, this video was by the request of one of my subscribers. And the main content is the guide to starting web development in 2024. And like I said earlier, my focus will be on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. Now, I will be giving my own thoughts on, as I mentioned these things, I'll be giving my own thoughts on how I followed up when I started learning, when I started out. And the first thing I want to start out with is HTML. Very important. Now, in case you don't know what HTML is, HTML simply stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is what defines the structure of web pages. Now, obviously, as a web developer, the first tool, the first technology you're going to learn is HTML. And when I started out, there were some platforms that I started learning from first before moving on to other platforms and moving on to other approaches. Remember, I stated earlier that I actually preferred the reading approach. I preferred it so much up to this point. So this is how I did it. This was my structured plan when I started learning HTML. First, I started with this site you see here called SoloLearn. Now, I recommend that if you're using this site, you should get the mobile application because it's much more easier to follow along using the mobile application than the actual site. So you can create an account, sign in, go through the courses. It has so many courses, but like we said, we're starting from HTML. Go through the HTML course and follow everything, understand the syntax. And when you're now feeling comfortable with what you've learned from SoloLearn, you can now go to the next site, of which the next site is, from what I followed, was W3 Schools. Now, the reason why I like mixing and matching like this is that each site, each platform has a different approach in learning. For example, SoloLearn prefers the brief approach, but focusing on the skills. W3 Schools prefers like stating the details. So if you're comfortable with the fundamentals you've gotten from SoloLearn, then you should move forward to W3 Schools, where you can get more information on the particular tools and technologies that you're actually learning. So that's what I did. Now, needless to say, you can actually still watch courses, video courses on HTML and learn from there. But like I said, I'm giving guides on what I actually did. Now, when I was done with W3 Schools, the next section, the next platform I went to was MDN. Now, you guys actually have, for beginners particularly, you have to be very careful when you're going to MDN. Now, MDN is a site that contains core documentation, so not everyone will be able to handle this, but you can still visit it once in a while just to get some things if you still want to learn more about the tags or whatever attributes, whatever you've learned from your HTML courses. So what I did was, after SoloLearn and WG Schools, I glanced through MDN docs, just learned a few things, and then when I felt comfortable, I'm really a perfectionist, so you should that's a no. That, like, it should be clear. It should be obvious from what I've said so far that I'm a perfectionist. So when I was done with that, I then decided to proceed to CSS. And for the CSS, I started again with the SoloLearn. So my approach was SoloLearn first for the fundamentals. So going back to SoloLearn, I started their CSS course. After learning the CSS course with SoloLearn, I moved forward to W3 Schools for more information. So that was my structure. Everyone, you could have your own structure as well. This worked for me. So I also recommend it because it has also worked for one other person I recommended it to. So after W3 Schools, you can then go forward to Free Code Camp. Now, Free Code Camp is an awesome site. Now, the reason why I did not mention Free Code Camp earlier when I was talking about the HTML is that the first course I actually took in Free Code Camp was their responsive web design course, and the course combines HTML and CSS. So it will really help if you have background knowledge on HTML and CSS before starting the course. Though you could start it without knowing anything and still gain something, but I prefer this is like the path of the least resistance. So Free Code Camp, finish the responsible design, build the project, and trust me, you would feel so much confident by the end of the course. And then you can decide to go forward with MDN again and read some documentations that's left for you. And then I will never leave this out, and that's KPower. Now, if you're feeling confident about the CSS you've written so far, you've learned from different platforms, I strongly advise you check this site out. Now, he has a lot of courses, a lot of awesome courses. I need to emphasize on that, awesome. Some are free, some are paid. Trust me, you would not regret watching these courses. Kevin simplifies CSS. Like, he makes it the easiest go-to model. He wants to make CSS less frustrating, and he wants to make everyone love CSS. Like, he really takes the time and goes in depth to explaining some concepts. When you're done with taking any of these courses, you actually be sure that you've gained something. So that's that for the CSS. So remember, like I said, you can't just be learning. You have to learn and actually practice. So when you are feeling very nice, when you're feeling powerful, when you feel like hacking an entire site after learning your HTML and CSS, you can move forward to this beautiful site called Frontend Mentor. Now, Frontend Mentor is a site where challenges have been curated for developers at their different stages of learning. For example, if you're a newbie and just learned HTML and CSS, you will see newbie challenges for you to start working on. Now, they provide, depending on what package you're going on, premium or the free, you can have access to the resources like Figma files, or if you're not on premium, then you just have access to the images. Unless it's a free plus challenge, you can learn more on the site itself. And it's my personal recommendation because I've actually built a lot of sites, a lot of projects from Frontend Mentor, and it actually helped me improve a lot. So I always give Frontend Mentor a thumbs up because their challenges are awesome and their designs are beautiful. One more thing, I'm just going to digress a bit, and it's about something that I just remember something that Kevin always says. Now, if you are learning development for the first time, please note, do not bother about your designs being perfect. Now, web design and web development are two core concepts that are separated. do not try to learn two of them at the same time, especially when you can't handle it. Now, there are those that can do that, polymaths. But for people like us that like focusing on one task and we are good at that, we want to get good at that task from moving forward, I suggest that you just focus on web development. Leave the design. You don't have to start thinking about making your designs look beautiful or perfect. That's why we have tools like Frontend Mentor, platforms like Frontend Mentor to help us we can actually use the designs and just like match those designs. Okay, now one more thing, I also recommend taking down notes. Very important. When I was learning, I actually had a notebook where I took down notes, important notes that I feel I could revisit later. Now the idea is you are going to revisit the notes. You're not just writing notes and you're abandoning them. I remember the first two notes I had, I repeated them. I think I read through them exactly 3 times. So when I doing that would actually, because there's this concept of repetition. Repetition is the key to long and lasting impression. So by the time you do that constantly, you would be able to make those things stick. And then you also complement this with practice, very important. And after, when you feel so comfortable with HTML and CSS, then move ahead to JavaScript. Now, HTML, like I said, gives the structure, CSS gives the styling, JavaScript is what performs the magic, it gives the functionality. For your web page to be functional, it requires JavaScript. And now, as usual, my method was starting with Solo Learn. I started with Solo Learn, took their JavaScript course, and when I felt comfortable, I moved on to W3 Schools to get more information about it. And when I was done with W3 Schools, I moved straight to Free Code Camp. Now, Free Code Camp's JavaScript algorithms, data structure certification is one of the best. Take it from me. It is the best. By the time you finish it, you will be sure that you are grounded in JavaScript. Truth be told, that's how I felt. I felt so powerful when I finally completed my final projects, especially the cash register. Okay, so when you're done with Free Code Camp, then again, you can also go to MDN to get more information about it. It's open for you. Just is your choice. And finally, a site that I also love so much, so close to MDN, is javascript.info. Now, javascript.info is a complete, and I don't exaggerate when I say it's a complete guide in learning JavaScript from the beginning to the end. Like, it is so detailed. It is almost as detailed as MDN. If they're not already on equal terms for JavaScript particularly. Now, it's so useful and I recommend you actually checking this site out. I think they also have more documentations on other things like frameworks like Angular and jQuery. In case you want to check them out, you can do that. Obviously, I'll be putting all the links in the description below. And then, after you're done learning, remember, as you're learning, please, as I'm saying, after you're done learning, it doesn't really mean that you read through everything before you actually practice. You can learn something, then practice, learn another thing and practice. But remember, always practice. Now, you could then move to Frontend Mentor and try bigger projects. You see projects that have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, intermediate projects, and so on and so forth. You can try those ones, try advanced projects. And then when you're done building, now, Frontend Mentor is mainly for building minor UI components. If you actually want to build full-on sites, you can decide to go to a site like Frontend Practice. Now, in Frontend Practice, you actually build real websites. You actually build the sites from beginning to end. I suggest going to Frontend Practice when you build enough Frontend Mentor projects, because you actually start from building UI components, little UI components, so you can get used to building before actually building full-on pages. Okay, and after working on a good number of projects and you start feeling very confident and you start feeling balanced, you feel you're okay with what you've learned in the core fundamentals, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can move onwards to the next step. You can start learning about frameworks like React, Angular, Vue, and you can learn about libraries like jQuery and so on and so forth. that's all up to you. Like I said, every single developer's learning path is different. Before I wrap up, I want to mention one important tool, and that is roadmap.sh. Now, roadmap.sh is an open source project. When I say open source, I mean it's there for the entire community of developers to contribute to. Now, it is a site that contains curated roadmaps on different aspects of development. It's not just web development, there is a lot here: front end, back end, DevOps, blockchain, cybersecurity, game developer, and so on and so forth. So there are so many roadmaps. Now, a little disclaimer here: do not get thrown off by roadmaps. Now, you are not expected to learn every single thing on roadmaps. The roadmaps are there to guide you. Doesn't mean you need to learn every single thing on the roadmap. If you feel comfortable with what you've learned so far, you can decide to move forward. That's why I love this particular roadmap so much, because they are actually labels that are given. They are labels given, so you know which one there are personal recommendations, which ones you need to learn, the ones that you can skip and come back to later. Everything is highlighted here in roadmap.sh. And like I said, just to repeat myself, remember, roadmaps are only there to guide you. You do not need to learn everything in them. One more thing, another disclaimer. Note that you don't actually need to follow my steps, the exact steps I took. Like I said, every single developer's learning path is different. You can decide to learn in a different way. But just keep it in mind that you need to dedicate time in practicing and getting better. And please, one thing that I see developers these days making mistake in is not being grounded in the fundamentals and rushing to frameworks like React. Trust me, if you are grounded in the fundamentals, you will move with lightning speed when you start frameworks like React, Next, Angular. That's because these frameworks are actually built upon the fundamentals. So it wouldn't make sense is if you're not getting the fundamentals, you go and start learning a framework, and then you have to go back to learning a concept in the fundamentals before continuing your learning in the framework. Like, it would be counterproductive. So it's best you take the time. You have to be patient, even though you have the time frame you're working with. Structure yourself. Ensure that you dedicate enough time to learn the fundamentals and be grounded in them first before moving on to the next step. Okay, so that's a wrap. That's a wrap for today's coding session. If you really enjoyed this video, don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to never miss out on any of our coding escapades. I really love to hear your opinions on this video, and if you have any video requests, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can indicate them in the comment section, or you can DM me privately, and I would really appreciate your feedback on this. And until next time, happy coding and stay awesome.